Whether or not you know it, you already have a neurodiverse workforce or work environment around you. This means the people around you all have different brains. This is a really cool thing and leads to increased strategy, output, innovation, and so much more. Having neurodiversity at work is fantastic, if only you know how to support it. Now, here's the thing when it comes to supporting neurodiversity at work. Chances are, like I said, you have a neurodiverse workforce already, and you have colleagues who are neurodivergent, if you are also not neurodivergent yourself, perhaps. And when you have these neurodivergent colleagues, it's usually sometimes easier to spot them than others. Maybe they are the people who are always bringing new ideas to the table, who always are thinking out of the box and have a lot of great ideas, and that they're extremely hardworking and sometimes maybe don't quite fit in at the office culture, or just seem that they're struggling in other areas of their professional well-being. Now, it can be hard to support these folks sometimes because we just don't know what to do. Typically, our instinct is to find out what's wrong with somebody, right? We want to know exactly what something is so then we can immediately jump into problem-solving mode and fix it. My advice for you is you're not here to fix people. I feel very strongly that neurodivergent people are not failed versions of normal, and we're not broken people. It's up to you to figure out how to best support this person so they could thrive throughout their time in your workplace. You might want to pinpoint something that's really difficult for them. We're hardwired to judge, but there are things that we know that we can possibly make a little bit easier for someone without necessarily making their job change completely. For instance, I am someone who works really, really well when things are broken down into smaller tasks and that the deadlines are firm. If I know how urgent and important something is, and it feels more manageable than just go do this thing in a very nebulous, ambiguous sense, I'm gonna get it done. And if I know that it's due tomorrow, I know that's more important than the other thing that perhaps I'm supposed to be doing. That's one way that you can accommodate my brain and my executive challenges that are related to neurodivergence. Something else that can be helpful is having things like remote work options, hybrid work. These things can be extremely helpful for someone who struggles in a traditional social work environment, and also someone who maybe works at asynchronous hours. I know that I have a tendency to respond to emails after business hours because I can focus more without my inbox constantly being pinged with new things coming in, and then I can just work it down to zero and start all over the next day. These are things that might be helpful to me. If you're a neurodivergent person too, you might also not know what's helpful for you, or the accommodations and adjustments that perhaps are being offered might not be what you had in mind. For instance, I used to get offered extra time on assignments a lot when I was in school. I never needed extra time. I always got everything done in the time frame prescribed. That was never what I needed. But looking back, I struggled a lot with being able to pay attention and take notes at the same time because I never knew what to write down, what was important, and how to keep going through all that information. It seemed like a lot to do simultaneously and would often leave me feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, and with notes I didn't really know how to make sense of. I did learn later on, for instance, is I could ask somebody else for their notes, or that there was a note-taking service. So something that I do now professionally, knowing that sometimes dividing my attention between writing things down and listening to colleagues, I ask someone else in meetings to be my designated note taker and to send me a recap of what we talked about later on. This also helps the business and me and my colleague because we're all on the same page about what we've met about, and also it helps with transparency purposes. So these things actually don't just improve the life of the neurodivergent colleague in person, but also improves workplace culture overall. That's the coolest thing, is that supporting your neurodivergent and neurodiverse workforce ends up bringing innovation for everybody to make work more competent, to make us into better communicators, and to be able to help each other, because that way we can keep moving things forward. That we have people who get it, we have a culture of inclusion and acceptance and policies that are equitable and work well for everybody involved. Again, there is no one size fits all when it comes to neurodivergence and neurodiversity, but being open-minded, empathetic, non-judgmental, and really listening to the concerns and strengths that your neurodivergent colleagues have can help you come up with better solutions together. Because it shouldn't just be one person having to constantly advocate for themselves. It gets exhausting having to say, this is really hard for me, or this is what I need right now. Sometimes having a two-way street, an open line of communication, makes it so much easier for everybody, and that way we can keep innovating and moving forward together.